If you were hoping for Bucks to make you feel better about the Packers, that didn't happen in Denver tonight. Bucks drop another winnable game, this time in Denver. But have we learned anything about these Bucks over this 4-game road trip? We'll discuss that and more on today's show.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What it do, y'all? Welcome to Locked On Bucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Now, the #1 sports podcast network out here, your team every day. I'm Camille Davis, an NBA analyst with the Locked On Network and co-host of the Technical Foul podcast, joined by Frank Madden, longtime voice of the pod and founder of brewhoop.com. We truly do appreciate you for tuning in, making Locked On Bucks that first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And on today's show, Bucks finished this 4-game road trip with a 2-2 record. Have we learned anything new about this group? We also saw in this Denver game, Giannis with the ball in his hands a bit more. So we'll take a closer look at Giannis, the initiator, and what that might mean for some other guys on the team. But to start, the Bucks drop another winnable game. This time in Denver, 108-104. And really for two big reasons in my book, Frank. One, just really shoddy execution down the stretch for this team. And also really, really terrible play whenever Giannis was not on the court in Denver. And when this game was on the schedule initially, it was like, man, that's going to be a tough game going to Denver, so on and so forth. Nikola Jokic. Nuggets were very shorthanded. There was no Jokic. There was no Murray. There was no Valanciunas in this game. No Cam Johnson. And yet and still the Denver Nuggets were able to find a way, despite going through a few different scoring droughts in this game. The Bucks just didn't seem to have enough when it came to anyone outside of Giannis or just executing properly down the stretch. Because let me tell you, that last play when it was a 3-point game with like 33 seconds to go, they got 3 shots on that possession. Every single shot was bad. It was just not the ending you want to see for the Bucks, especially after having a pretty good game against the Lakers in the clutch.
It's funny thinking of anything that happened in that Laker game in the fourth quarter as being good, but they did actually make plays in the final couple minutes. Yeah, I mean, they are who we have thought they were, or whatever the Denny Green statement is. I guess, Camille, like, at least they didn't get a big lead and then blow it. They just kind of were mediocre, all through the first half. The amount of casualness that I saw in the first 1.5 quarters, 2 quarters was I'd say pretty indicative of like this team's like personality. Like, I saw Kyle Kuzma casual on defense. I saw Giannis casual on defense in that first half. Bobby Portis is always, like a half step, not really there on defense. It just seemed again like a team that saw the lineup and thought like, we can just go out and kind of, run our stuff and we should win the game. And, the Nuggets came out, they shot the ball well, and you look at the end stats. Another example of the Bucks not having a 3-point advantage and losing because they don't have enough margin for error, even when they're playing a team that, is obviously really limited. And, like, the 2-point defense was excellent. Like, you look at like some of the shooting split stats. Denver only 11 of 19 at the rim. I think they were like 4 of 20, like 10 of 33 on mid-rangers or something like that. So, that alone, you would see that and you would say like, okay, I feel pretty good that we can win that game. But, alas, the Bucks, gave up too many free throws, and Denver shot well above the break. They were 11 of 25 above the break, which, whatever, there's some bad luck in there perhaps, but I couldn't help but notice the Hawks blowing out the Warriors in San Francisco, and the Warriors were shooting 22% from 3. And I was like, God damn it. Like the Bucks are not good enough to not need those types of shooting performances to work in their favor. So yeah, I mean, it's not like the worst performance ever, but as you pointed out, Giannis plus 16 in 33 minutes. He goes for 31, 11 assists, 8 boards. And the Bucks lost by 4. So that tells you they were minus 20 in the 15 minutes that Giannis sat. A very Jokic-like line for Giannis in Denver. And unfortunately, just they did not quite get enough when he was in the game. And, I think it just starts with the guards. I mean, just 5-26 shooting combined from Porter and Rollins. I mean, like you're going to lose a game, and the young guys from Denver just discombobulated them, and those guys, just could not make plays and befitting down the stretch. Those guys, Rollins finally made a layup in the final minute, I think it was, but that last possession was, just all over the place. Or I guess it wasn't technically the last possession, but the
last real possession of the game, what it felt like.
Yeah, the defining final possession where they were down 3 and had a chance to tie, and it just ended up being, Keystone Cops. That kind of felt like what it's like to watch the Bucks in a nutshell. And I was joking with someone, about Gary Harris and how really like Gary Harris has been a breath of fresh air just because he's like an adult, and you kind of, can count on him to just like not do like stupid
stuff.
Just be solid. Yeah. And I felt bad. He hit his only 2 threes from the corner against his old team, and then basically didn't play 15 minutes for Gary Harris. But yeah, I mean, again, like Doc tried to, show confidence in Ryan Rollins and KPJ, which I can appreciate that, right? Like not benching either of them late. But yeah, I mean, they obviously they're the 2 obvious sore thumbs in terms of why the Bucks lost this game. And it was interesting that the Bucks went small to close it with Kuzma and Giannis as the bigs, which we have not seen very much at all this year. But again, Tim Hardaway randomly going for 25 points on 12 shots, like that was pretty much it. He was plus 27 in 35 minutes,
averages like 13, 14 points this season, and he got a game where he got hot.
Yeah. So yeah, it felt like the Bucks looked like a team that was content to get their 500 road trip out of the way, and that's what they got.
Yeah, I think one part that you mentioned with the closing bigs being Kuz and Giannis, I saw Myles Turner like leave early in the game, and then when the second half started, like he wasn't out there, and it was kind of like, what is going on with Myles Turner? Is he all right? And Doc, after the game, I heard part of his post-game conference, not the full one, but he mentioned that Myles Turner is sick. He's sick. So
I was gonna assume diarrhea was what was going on.
I thought he had to use the bathroom too. I was like, maybe an upset stomach or something like that. But he said he was sick, and Doc said he actually didn't even realize that Myles wasn't available to start the third quarter until they looked around, because he said like they drew up the first play for Myles or something like that. And he was like, oh wait, okay, now we have to go with Bobby instead. And he said we had to do like Myles tried to play through it. He got off to a really good start in this game too. But just didn't have it in him to really finish out the game. And he made mention of like how he didn't like how Myles being out affected the rotation, because we weren't able to get Bobby Portis, Kevin Porter Jr. minutes, because he likes that pairing together, which I found just that language. I was just like, okay, all right, that's the pairing we're going for. Okay, noted.
Love get. Oh man, as long as you can get those Bobby Portis KPJ minutes together, you're gonna get.
Right, you're good. You're good to go. But it affected the game down the stretch, and then we saw Giannis play the entire fourth quarter here in this game. And as we mentioned, with what it looked like when he wasn't on the floor, kind of had to, which also was disappointing. Again, when you look across it from you and you see who Denver does not have in the lineup and what it still took for the Bucks to try to fight and claw their way back into it. But I do want to take a closer look at Giannis, the playmaker, because it felt like there was a pointed effort to make sure that he was initiating the offense a bit more in this game than what we've seen as of late. And I do want to talk about what that might mean for Kevin Porter Jr. and Ryan Rollins a bit more going forward right after this. But first, a word from our friends over at FanDuel because Fridays already feel different during basketball season. And FanDuel is making it even better. Every single Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with what they're calling NBA Happy Hour. An NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside that FanDuel app before the action starts. So on Fridays, from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, 5 to 6:30 Central, it's appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. You open that app during happy hour and you'll get something new every single time. Boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It just adds some extra energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. So, before tip off, make sure you check out the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday, 6 to 7:30 Eastern, 5 to 6:30 Central. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That is NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. And please remember, gamble responsibly. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, making Locked On Bucks that first listen. Big thanks as well for making Locked On the #1 sports network. You already live your team every day, so take it up another level. Go ad free and join the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Bucks with no interruptions, members only Discord, and more for $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonbucks.supercast.com or just check out the link in the show description to learn more. Giannis the initiator. We've been hearing the comments, and it's not like it's new. We know that Giannis likes to have the ball in his hands. We know Giannis likes to be the initiator. We heard him say as much in a very detailed analogy at the end of last season. We're talking about the cookie jar, how he feels like he's carrying the cookie jar with him when he has the ball in his hands, so he can be a bit more careful about when he chooses to eat the cookies. He can take his time a little bit more. And we've also heard him this season talk about some of the learning curves of playing with these two young guards and saying like, hey, I'm getting the ball a lot more in the post touches than I have before. And this, he said, after coming back from his most recent injury stint. So he's been working his way back into the flow of things. And it felt like tonight's game against Denver was the first time in a while where we've seen him really be able to kind of just lead the offense as the lead initiator. Only even took 2 field goal attempts in the first quarter, 4 assists though. But I thought in the third quarter in particular was when he had the perfect blend of like aggression and vision. He had like 7 points, 3 assists in that quarter. And you could see him being frustrated when he had to come out in the third quarter with the momentum that was building at that time, getting the Bucks back in the game. But I do wonder, with this seeming like we're getting back to Giannis being on ball more, we've talked a bit about Rollins having to adjust to playing next to Kevin Porter Jr., having the ball a little bit less, and the two of them having to adjust playing next to Giannis, having the ball a little bit less. Now, KPJ has seemingly continued to be able to initiate at a pretty high clip. This game, again, it felt like Giannis was getting a little bit more of that. How do you think that Giannis becoming more of an initiator again will affect Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr.'s games going forward? Because the reality of it is, as we've talked about, the Bucks don't really have many shot creators. Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. are not perfect. We saw the growing pains of it in tonight's game. But how do you think that might affect them continuously going forward with Giannis if he continues to be that lead playmaker for the squad?
I mean, there needs to be less KPJ dribbling in this offense. Like, I think you look at the time of possession stats the NBA has. I think KPJ was like 6th or something in like total time of possession, literally how much time you have dribbling the ball in the NBA. And he's played like slightly fewer minutes than all the superstars ahead of him. So it really doesn't make sense for him to be so far ahead when A, he's playing with Giannis a lot, and B, he's got another guy in Rollins that can dribble and attack. And, so I mean, they have to figure out some better way to balance things. And it just seems like the rule is like KPJ is treated like when they start games, like the point guard. Rollins is basically parking in the corner more or less. And then, the question is like, how are they using Giannis exactly? And, Giannis has been, it was interesting. Like, you saw the comments he made a couple games ago? Maybe it was after the Warriors game. I don't know. But when he was talking about like, oh, their record when he gets X number of things like that. first off, let me say this, like those types of stats are a bit deceiving because Giannis, the Bucks are probably always going to look better when Giannis has higher assist numbers because it means that the Bucks are making 3-pointers
around him. Yes.
and it's not necessarily because Giannis is like touching the ball more when he has these like high assist games. A lot of it's just because like it was a better shooting night, and because Giannis is generally setting guys up for, good looks most nights, right? Obviously sometimes more than others. So, I don't like that stat. To me is a little bit biased. There's a little causation correlation kind of going on with that. And it was interesting because it was like he was sort of saying like he wants the ball, which I mean we know he wants the ball, but then he was also saying like, well, these guys need the ball too because they're going to need to get reps and etc. So I thought it was a very interesting dynamic. There was some like lightheartedness mixed in too. So like when you read the straight quote without seeing him say it, like it was an interesting one to try to parse. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think this game was interesting because he was sort of more in playmaker mode to start, and throughout much of that first half, like he really had a hard time getting a rhythm against the way the Nuggets were defending him and the way that they were showing him kind of multiple bodies. They obviously didn't have like a lot of traditional like rim protection or size, but they had some athleticism. Obviously, Gordon's a very, very good defender.
Yeah, super physical and strong too.
Yeah, and they were. It was a weird game. There was also that play where it looked like he had a 3-point play, but people were wondering why, and I think it was because he clearly jumped up, came down, and then shot it after he came to the ground, which understandably it's like, well, you can't do that even if you're fouled. So it's a shooting foul, even though they wiped out the basket. I thought that he had a play like that against the Bulls actually when he came back his first game, and I was sort of like, why aren't the Bulls coaches like pointing this out that he landed and then put the ball up, but they didn't really catch it. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think this was like an extreme game in terms of the other. I mean, obviously KPJ and Rollins going 5 for 26 or whatever they were. That's not going to happen very often. So I think Giannis feeling like he needed the ball in his hands probably was a bit more by force, and it had to happen. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, like he's been, I mean, it's weird. We came into the season thinking Giannis was going to be like super ball dominant. And, he's going to set career highs in assists, blah, blah, blah. His assist rate per minute is still quite high. It's still close to I don't know if it's still the highest in his career. But it obviously has ticked down since he came back from the injury. And, he is, I think, being pretty differential to those guys getting touches. So yeah, I mean, I think we need less KPJ. Trading more Giannis for less KPJ, I think would be good. But I think also just Rollins and KPJ just like playing off each other better. And it's like when KPJ doesn't have it, like getting quicker to finding that second side action with Rollins, for instance, like that is what you'd want. And obviously like they haven't entirely figured that out. That said, the starting 5 group has the stats coming this game were still like plus 24 per 100 or something like that, even without like crazy positive shooting variance. So that group has worked, but I think it's more, just Giannis force of nature versus like Rollins, KPJ, like figuring out completely how to play with each other. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, that, again, as we try to like talk ourselves into like how this team may carve out some better version of itself, I think that's got to be part of kind of what you hope for. Is as good as the numbers have been from those guys, obviously they could still figure a lot out in terms of how to play off one another and how to play off Giannis. But it's hard. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much it can be sped up, especially if you still have the same coaching staff,
Yeah, that's a big part of it. I will say this too. I think that it's important that those guys continue to get those touches too, especially when it comes to like the second action or the third action in a game, in a possession, where it's like, okay, even if Giannis initiates, the ball's going to end up in somebody's hand eventually. Do you have the right IQ? Can you see the floor the right way to make those plays for other guys? And I still do trust Rollins and KPJ in those moments. One person who stood out a little bit to me recently is AJ Green. He had a couple of assists in this game where I was like, the playmaking is flashing a little bit for AJ, which is a positive in his development as well, just as a young guard on this team. We've known him as a shooter for all this time in the league so far, but if he can continue to add that playmaking into his bag, it just makes his game a little bit more well-rounded and it's going to be a positive for the team going forward. One more thing, passing wise, I'll say the last defining possession, as we said in the fourth quarter when it was a 3-point game. One thing that stood out to me as well was just like some of the passes were so low where it was like they had a chance, I think, for 2 pretty decent looks from 3 in that possession, but the passes were off target to the point where the defender was able to close out. And that was a theme a little bit throughout the game. Just the passes have to be on time, especially for a team that's looking to get up as many threes as possible. Only 34 in this game. And again, Myles Turner didn't play the minutes that we expected him to. He was 3 of 4 from 3 himself coming into this one. So something to keep an eye on is just the AJ Green playmaking. That's something I just kind of have like a noticing flag on is what I'll say about that. But let's take a look back so far at this 4-game road trip now that it's officially come to a close, because when it started, me and you, Frank, had a conversation about what success would look like. And now that we're at the end of it, let's take a look back to see if we feel like it was actually all that successful a little bit more right after this. One reason that I love using Game Time so much is that they just make the whole process of buying tickets easier. And during basketball season, there is nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, the first big run that gets everyone on their feet. And shoot, there ain't no more Packers football right now. So Fiserv is probably going to be pumping. Fans want to be in there for these moments. You don't want to be stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. That's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it super easy to score amazing tickets fast, simple, and without the guesswork. Browsing the Game Time app is straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets just takes a few taps. Plus, prices are included with the fees up front. So the total is clear from the very start. Whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDON NBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. All right, so the Milwaukee Bucks finish up this 4-game road trip with a 2-2 record. At the start, we mentioned like, hey, 2-2 is the floor. Like that's the baseline. That's the bare minimum that we want to see from this team coming back. But seeing the injury report for some of these games, it was like 3-1. I know I said 3-1 ideally would be like, okay, we're on a really good foot right now, especially because the Bucks are still digging themselves out of a hole that they created themselves by dropping some winnable games, not executing down the stretch, so on and so forth. It felt like a great opportunity for the Bucks to try to make up some ground on the Bulls and find themselves a way out of the lottery and into the play-in conversation at this point in the season, but weren't able to do that. How do you feel about the Bucks with this road trip? And do you feel like you learned anything different about this team? Because for me, it feels like a confirmation more than anything else of thoughts I already had about this team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anything really different. We didn't really see anything different. I mean, I guess in some regard, right? Like they weren't competitive. It seemed like through a lot of the Golden State second half, but then ended up, only quote unquote losing by 7 tonight. Obviously, it ends up being a close game, and you just couldn't close out. Had ample chances. So again, they didn't lay any eggs. Optimism, silver linings. I don't know, right? Like it's hard to take a moral victory from the road trip in that regard. Given how just hopelessly mediocre this team has been this year, like 2-2 on a West Coast road trip seems like you should probably be pretty content with that. But obviously, what leaves the bad taste in your mouth is the fact that you were 2-1. I don't want to say stole the win in LA, because the Lakers have been like, the biggest overachievers in terms of like a negative point differential team that is somehow like 22-13 or whatever they were when the Bucks played them. So to then get the injury report, specifically with Murray being out of this game, you get this golden opportunity to steal a win in Denver, which is such a difficult place to play. And you just can't get out of your own way. It kind of is just a typical Bucks sort of thing to do. So yeah, I mean, again, it's, you kind of treaded water relative to trying to claw out of the hole that you've been in. And unfortunately, the schedule is not as, full of cupcakes as it was, a couple weeks ago when you looked at it and you said like, boy, we got like 8 games here that are like, we should be favored in all of them.
Yeah.
Not obviously not like they weren't going to be favored in like Golden State and LA, but prior to that, right? And they obviously again conjured some losses out of games that, like the Washington game, obviously that was just like, man, guys, like you got to win these games. So yeah, they just sort of kind of keep, hovering, hacking away, trying to get to 500, and we'll see if they ever manage to get there. But I don't know. I mean, like, again, I think this team is talented enough with Giannis healthy that like they could go on a 4 or 5 game winning streak at some point. But are they just as likely to lose 3 or 4 in a row as well? Like again, like all those things are possible. So it just seems like a team that, if they don't figure something out, like they could just be again just sort of hacking away at like 11th place in the East for a while. And the upside is like a lot of these, I mean, a lot of these teams in the East are not running away and hiding, right? You look at like teams like Orlando that have injuries and have been sort of like really up and down. The Bulls obviously aren't, running away. Cleveland's had like some good performances, but like, they're still trying to really get out of first, second gear as well. So yeah, I mean, let's see how they do on this homestand. I mean, this has been a wildly disappointing team at home, as mediocre as they've been on the road. I think I forget what their record is on the road at this point, but they're actually like okay. Like I think if you told me before the season what their road record was going to be, I would think like, oh well, they'll at least be 500 then. But because they've been just so underwhelming at home, here they are at 17-22, right? They're 9-9 at home, 8-13 away. You can survive 8-13. I mean, the Knicks are 8-10 on the road. The Magic are 9-11. Like the Heat are 7-13. Like these are all teams way ahead of you in the standings, because they've been like good at home, and the Bucks, are just
500.
I mean, 500 is just rough. And some of those losses have been just really bad. So yeah, I mean, again, it's funny looking at like the last the last 10 column in the standings. It's like, everybody except for the Pacers is at least, 4-6, 5-5 in the last 10. The Bucks are 6-4.
Like everyone.
No, like the best is Boston and Toronto being 7-3. So it's pretty tightly compacted, but it's just there's room to move up in the standings. But again, like you've had Giannis back now for a while, and you've only made a little bit of a dent there, and I don't think they've moved up the standing. Have they even moved up in the standings since Giannis came back? I don't think they have.
They've just been like closer at certain times, but no, they've stayed in 11.
Yeah. So we'll see. But I mean, Giannis, interesting game from him. I think he started 2 for 6 from the field. And just some like weird missed kind of point blank shots, got blocked, not seeing Zeke Naji. Just like a weird first half from him offensively. He was kind of in distributor mode at the very early stages. But then, third quarter, fourth quarter kind of began to sort of start to, kind of go Terminator mode. He had those kind of back-to-back possessions where he went left, spun back to the right, and got dunks.
And his mid-range was falling in this game too.
Yeah. I mean, it's wild. I looked at his stats the other day. I think he was shooting like 21% on the season for mid-range, according to the the NBA.com sort of categorization. Last year he was like 44%. Like it is crazy how, I mean, literally the worst mid-range shooting season of like, prime Giannis that we've seen by far. And he's still putting up, the best efficiency stats of his career, because he's basically kind of really taken that out of his game. But, tonight he hit, one early, and then, he hit that tough fader in the fourth quarter, which
Yeah,
I was
that
just
baseline
like,
fader,
oh,
yeah.
like that is not a shot I want him taking, not this season in that scenario. But he hit it, finished 10 out of 17, got back to shooting a bit better from the foul line. Did have an 0 for 2 in the second half, but finished 10 for 14, which, 71%, happily take that.
Mhm.
So after that bad Golden State game, he's now 13 of 18 the last couple games. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, like we kind of careful we don't take it for granted with
Yes.
Giannis, but I don't know. I did not like how I think there were like at least three plays where he just like blatantly went for a steal and got himself
Yes.
completely out of the play defensively.
Yeah.
He had a couple of really nice blocks as well, but I don't know. It's just kind of, to me, this is like bad habits, lazy defense. I remember him doing this during the brief Griff era, where it was just like, oh, we're going to create steals. Like, okay, that means I can just gamble and like
Yeah.
fart around, on defense on the perimeter. So that was, felt kind of indicative of at least in the first half. I think that was a problem that the Bucks had defensively, and I think they were much better in the second half. But
I would agree with that.
like still, I don't know, just some of the calls were tough. Like AJ Green not getting a couple of potential illegal screens on him on
Mhm.
when Hardaway hit a shot. I think that was in the fourth, and then AJ getting called for that. Like he bit on a pump fake, but like didn't really make any
Yeah, he kept
contact.
his hands. He like moved back out of the way, and they still called the foul.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It was just rough. And then even the play where they originally called it a foul on the box out on Gordon.
Oh, when they fell
Like,
underneath the
yeah, I
rim.
mean, like
Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if Giannis did like lock up and kind of pull him down, but like there were no angles that showed anything that
definitively to overturn it. I
like
was
you couldn't
surprised
see
that they didn't
anything. Yeah,
overturn
I
it
was
too.
like shocked that they overturned that. And if they don't, it's free throws for Giannis. Instead, it's
Mhm.
going the other way. So yeah, it just I mean, again, whatever. The officials didn't lose the game for the Bucks, but it just, again, just felt like just some tough moments. And it is what it is. Two
Yeah,
and two, go home, and you hope Rollins and KPJ wipe the memory banks of this
no,
one,
fact.
delete the videotape, and come back better next game.
Yeah, need them to have short memories because ultimately, again, the way this team is constructed, they need both of those guys to be performing a lot better than what we saw from them today. Bucks next opponent, the Timberwolves at home on Tuesday before they hit the road again for 2 games against the Spurs and then the Hawks. The first matchup against the Hawks, actually, that's the MLK day. So the Bucks schedule is kind of interesting too because they play Tuesday, they play Thursday, but then they're off Friday, Saturday, Sunday before they play again on Monday and then get back into the swing of kind of like a game every other day for a 3-game homestand to kind of wrap up the month of January. But that'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Bucks. We truly do appreciate you for tuning in, making us your first listen. As a reminder, again, check out the Everydayer Club. Get Locked On Bucks ad-free, plus the members-only Discord and more. So head over to lockedonbucks.supercast.com to sign up for that. And for those of you on the video side of things, we're going to send you over to that first 24/7 national NBA YouTube stream. On audio side, make sure your second listen is NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. Again, appreciate y'all for tuning in, especially after a rough one like this one. We'll be back with more Locked On Bucks tomorrow.